direction of where we want to take it. Nancy, you're going to start?
Yes.
Maybe you want this?
Thank you. Is this on? Does it sound like this is on?
Yep.
Okay, so the administration, the Coalition to End Homelessness, our community nonprofit partners have worked for over the years to first begin to understand how many total homeless people are out in the community so that we can do planning such as we'll be talking about today for enough shelter space for the population of homeless people that we have in our community. We've known for many years that there are more people homeless than we have shelter and housing capacity for, and so the work over the last 3 years has been to develop some targeted housing programs, look at our shelter system, determine how we can include resources so that we could shelter or provide a path toward housing and stability for homeless adults in our community. And today's discussion is primarily around homeless adults, where we feel the most pressure in the community. And so in 2017, looking at this balance of trying to ramp up housing and programs for people who we find out in the community while still accommodating their immediate needs, was addressed by the Assembly in an extension of the Emergency Cold Weather Shelter Ordinance, basically allowing it to operate year-round when we have need. And so this, the ordinance was extended and was up in June, and so I understand that's been addressed. And so now taking a look at the ordinance, which really I don't think reflects the current circumstances. I think there's some updates that are needed on the emergency cold weather shelter.
Thanks. And I think my understanding is that the two areas that we want to focus on in this session today is really about generating ideas and to look at moving from a cold weather system to a broader system of shelter for Anchorage. Is that correct? And then also the discussion around standards, around how we ensure that those being sheltered in those facilities doing it meet some sort of standard to ensure that it's safe and adequate. Am I correct in that?
I think there may be as a community, we have to look at a two-pronged approach. We continue to struggle with identification of buildings that will meet fire code and a facility, and the policy approach has been really to place pressure on housing programs to move people to a permanent solution. And so the balance is, how do you work with the immediate problem today where we know we have too many people in the system, and then how do you drive it toward a more balanced system that has adequate housing and programmatic options for people to get to stability, back to work, and back in community, versus taking care of the current crisis or safety needs.
Thanks. And I'd like to recognize Member Dyson. Thank you for joining us. I have a couple people in the queue. Mr. Constant.
Thank you. So the other side of that coin, which is very important in this conversation, is the safety of the vulnerable people in the shelters and the criminal activities that the people who are being predators around them, but also in providing for some protective factors for the community in the areas around the shelter services, because one of the important aspects of this whole conversation is, in the short term, what are we doing to provide for the public safety of our neighbors? So that's a very important aspect of this whole conversation. And I would just add slight nuance that the decision and discussion about coming up with a reframing or revision of this policy isn't driven by the administration, but it's actually driven by some members of the body who are looking closely at this. And we welcome the work with the administration, but this is an assembly-driven conversation at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. I wanted to echo a little bit of what Mr. Constant said. Excuse me. Particularly, I've had some conversations and some thoughts around our shelters, and I think a lot would agree that the status of some of our shelters aren't places people want to go. And I'm also concerned about the enforcement of conditional use permits that are in place for shelters. So it's my intent to look at the entire shelter designation scheme, how we go about regulating shelters, the standards of care. I alluded to this last night. I am impressed with how we license marijuana facilities and the special land use permit and that process. I find it to be comprehensive, involving all the right kinds of stakeholders like health, fire, police, and planning and zoning. I want to explore that possibility as we talk about shelters, and that we create spaces that both protect our public and protect those who need to access them. I really want shelter to be, if needed, an emergency shelter placement to be something that is a safety net that I would feel comfortable using and that the public would feel comfortable using. So that's my insight as we move forward. Mr. Gates informed me we may be having to also look at some Title 21 issues as we move forward. I asked him not to bring those documents today because we were going to keep this short, but we will definitely be looking at those probably next month. Mr. Wilson? Okay, I thought I said you.
If Mr. Weddleton doesn't want to speak, I'll briefly put words in his mouth. I bet he'll speak. He went to Omaha this last week and has described to a number of us, and I've seen photographs of the way the shelter system operates in a town that's not Anchorage. And I would love for him to establish what that was like.
You want me to talk now on that? Is that appropriate now? I'm not quite
Here you go.
Sure, I went to my niece's wedding in Omaha, took a break and did a tour of 2 different homeless complexes. And they're much more than the shelters. They had overnight and they had foods like we do at Brother Francis. One was low barrier like Brother Francis. The other one was you had to be sober and not high when you showed up. But I had gone on a run that morning. They ran by both of these. I didn't know what they were and never saw any sign that these were homeless shelters or anything. There's nothing on the street. They look clean and neat. And I was surprised later that day, oh, that's what that was. But they had everything together. One, they had the overnight thing, and they had food, but they had long-term, they had job training, they had places to store stuff, they had places to get clothes, they had a VA thing, they had a recovery center. This is all on one campus. They had showers and storage for people who chose not to stay there but were living elsewhere in the city. So that was a low barrier one. The high barrier one had basically all those services, but actually ramped up more. And they had separate facilities for families. They had a store where everything was free. They had clothing for people who needed them. It was really amazing, and they were clean and neat, everything together, and they had the capacity that was needed. I didn't see people. I saw one person camping right out on the sidewalk, essentially, in all of Omaha. So it's like, well, gosh, that's weird. That's not so bad. I didn't mind that. Under overpasses, I didn't see anyone. So clearly there are people living in the woods there, but it's not in most of their parks. It's really very impressive. And I just think they're 10 years ahead of us. They've got the resources together, and they've got everything together in one place. Once you have someone there, whatever they need, they're very close to. So that was one example, and it was very impressive.
Well, sure.
2 examples.
A long time ago. Yeah, John, I'm impressed. I'm glad you did that. Did you find out how they finance all these services?
The people hear me if I try to shout?
Outside voice.
Okay, the one was called Open Door. That was a faith-based, kind of the drive facility, and they took no government money, and my understanding is their highest, no donor was more than 20% of their operation, so they had fairly broad-based funding. And the other one I think was somewhat similar. It started in 1975, so they really had it down. They had a lot of donors. They also have some huge companies in town. The guy named Warren Buffett, you may have heard of, and his daughter amazing as Rasmussen is, this ramps it up quite a lot. But still, that wasn't the donor, it was one of many. They have some large companies there, so they had donors from all through the community, as much as we do, but it's a bigger community with deeper pockets. So it's not, I'm sure it's not cheap, and I think one of them said their budget was $5 million a year, but it covered a lot of ground. It was really incredible what they did.
Was there any tax-based support?
I believe on the low barrier they had, minimal, kind of like we do. They don't give the directly from the city coffers, not a huge amount. I don't have the number, but it wasn't.
Or state, or probably some federal grants?
There must have been some. They had a vet center, vet recovery, but a lot of federal money, I think, like we do. They use HUD money.
Yeah, thank you.
And so I think we're going to try to move on, but I want to sort of add to it just briefly that I had the opportunity to go to Houston as well, and Houston with a number of people, and we saw some very similar things about a town who had made significant progress. I think they had cut their homeless population in half over the course of, is it 6 years, 8 years?
Since 2011.
Since 2011. So we learned a lot about how that happened and what steps they needed to take. And I would say that the number one thing that we saw was that they were able to get a majority of the public organizations, the private organizations, the nonprofit, the service providers, the city, to actually sit down and work in collaboration. And that's what most of them credited their ability to move forward with. And so, just to close out this topic on the ordinance, I think the hope is to generate ideas about what's necessary for us to rethink our shelter ordinance. So I guess what I'm wondering is next steps.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think it's important to note a few things. Last night there was an ordinance passed, AO 2019-77, which is a stopgap measure Mr. Constant and I put forward to allow an extension of overflow or cold weather shelter to go from June 1, 2019 until September 1st of this year. So we are under a deadline, and I want to highlight that because we are talking about a significant ordinance change. I like the deadline. It will keep us motivated. So, let's get these ideas going. There's already some work being done. I will hope that at the next meeting, we will see a revised chapters 16.120 that we can really start to get into the meat of it, the changes that are proposed, along with probably companion Title 21 changes. So I encourage members who have ideas to work with council and the administration where you deem that's appropriate to get these versions forward so we can really get into the meat of it at our next meeting. I predict that it will probably be the main topic at our next meeting so that we have plenty of time that we get this introduced before the September 1st deadline.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Chapter 16 deals with the cold weather plan for homeless persons. Could the intent then to broaden the view and not just focus on this chapter, or to change this chapter so that it's beyond or encompasses more than cold weather?
The latter, so that it's broader, because we are already in operation doing something much broader.
I would suggest that there is some both, though. We already heard Ms. Alato discuss that it might incorporate some issues of Title 21 in the conversation. And so probably what I foresee happening is we will begin the conversation narrowly talking about the issues under the cold weather ordinance at this time and follow the path where it leads. And it might end up with a bifurcated process that takes a little more time on certain elements because the Title 21 rules require additional steps. But it at least is my intent that we take a comprehensive look at the process and the conversation to include the licensing questions and kind of the standards of care, and even a conversation about codifying a continuum of care of what services really need to be available and how then we can go about to get them, which won't necessarily be part of the code, they'll be more part of the adjustments.
Unity.
Yeah, so I've been impressed with what this administration is trying to do and Nancy's grip of it. Nancy, you pay attention. As I understood, I like solitaire too. As I understood one of our earliest conversations, you said average 1,000 people in our homeless population over the years, and that the all-in costs were something like $58,000 per homeless person, you know, and that gets into adult numbers pretty quick. The 5,000 Omaha is doing.
I think I said 5 million, but that was one.
5 million, I mean, yeah.
And it wasn't city money.
Yeah, and it would be helpful for us in our decision-making process if you could crunch the numbers and kind of give us an idea of what reducing the population and addressing the ones that are the highest maintenance or whatever, kind of the cost avoidance, you know, that we can look at, so we can get some idea of where we invest money and where it will save money that may be reused in other things. Can you get at least give a shot at that?
Somebody have a microphone. This is the work that's been done over the years on the Pay for Success project. There's a feasibility study that was conducted, you know, for our community, which tried to do the same kind of calculations that other communities have done. And so we have that document, and we are moving forward with the actual data pulls for those people who are high cycling through our system. So we'll have a method to provide real-time information about them. The place where that becomes challenging is we don't know all of the costs. We don't know the cost to the businesses who wake up with someone on their doorstep, and so all of those externalities or other sources are not known. We can maybe do some thinking about that and apply some estimates, but the actual costs to our police department, our fire department, in terms of dedicated people that are required, that are being used right now to essentially respond to folks that could be in shelter and housing programs is something we'll be able to get a handle on.
And if I may, and you know, we've had the community service patrol going around picking up, particularly during the cold weather and stuff. That's 30, 40 years old, as I remember.
Yes.
And that's got to be a significant part of this particular thing we're talking about in cold. And your input on that and the cost of that would be helpful. Maybe the number of calls or clients they have or whatever.
The data we'll be able, that we are currently analyzing with the university is fire department, police department, the health department, the Title 47, the sleep off holds, each of those, along with homeless data.
And which one of those does the community service patrol fall under? The health department?
The health department, yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So I have Mr. Constant in the queue, but I want to just make a couple of comments really quick. One is that I'm asking our Assembly Chair to set up a work session for us to have an extended conversation about the status, about where we are in terms of our work, and getting us sort of clear on that. So I think that's going to be a really good space and time for that. And as you can see, I'm trying to sort of, if we try to address everything in one space, we're going to address nothing in one space. So for this time, we want to, I think, focus on this ordinance and for public comment on the agenda items we have here. I'll work with the committee chair because I think debriefing Houston and Omaha and having a conversation about sort of where we're at as a city and where the coalition is at, and bring us together to have a better conversation about how we move forward, I think is going to be important. So, briefly, Mr. Constant.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson. One thing that Ms. Alatil and I did at our last assembly meeting, not last night, but 2 weeks ago, was we engaged Michael Chadwick, the municipal auditor, to run a parallel process that will begin to identify from the third party, our auditors, where we're actually sinking cash and money, taxpayers' resources into the challenges of the homeless system. And so they will also be looking at our expenditures for APD, AFD, Parks Department, all of it as we can get. And so there will be some opportunity to provide input to him in how we get to the information we're seeking, because the efforts that are ongoing over here can use some help, and we're going to bring it to ensure we get as clear a picture as we can of the cost that we're spending on this issue.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Yes.
I know that there's always a risk of broadening the discussion, but it is imperative that we pay attention to what's happening at the state level with Alaska Psychiatric Institute and some of those forces at play that we do not control. We are trying to manage what's happening in our state system and the erosion of that safety net. I can give you an example. Since January, the outreach team coordinated by the mobile intervention team within the police department has contacted 180 people on they're doing regular outreach sweeps of the city. And of those 180, people who did not have an active need for a mental health or substance use treatment referral were about 20 people. So that's 11%. And so this is what's happening in our community is we're dealing with a broken system at the state, and we're trying very hard to manage it, but we have to be paying attention to a level up from our work.
Thank you. Let's move on to the second item under business, report from Parks and Recreation regarding Campbell and Chester Creek green belts. Who's here to speak on that? Yeah, so do you have a microphone?
I don't. Hello, I'm Josh Duran, Park Superintendent. Start with just a generic update. To date, we have cleaned up 181 tons of trash within our parks and trails this year. And if you compare that to the total for last year, 243 tons, 3,900 staff hours, and compared to the total for last year, 6,600. For Chester Creek Trail, we did see a significant increase in the amount of trash and camps in that area specific this year, and we have completed camp cleanups and abatements for Valley of the Moon Park, Charles Smith Park, areas south of the Chester Creek Sports Complex, and right now we are currently back into that same area, Valley of the Moon Park, as well as south of the Chester Creek Sports Complex. And what's coming up next for that Greenbelt corridor is the East Chester Rogers Park area. For Campbell Creek Trail, we are seeing a similar amount of camps and trash to last year without a real significant increase, and cleanups in that area to date have been limited to Taku Lake Park, Waldron Park, Bancroft Park, and what's coming up next, which is a larger area, is within the Campbell Creek corridor from Lake Otis to Folker Street to Piper Street. And I understand that the Assembly may have some questions regarding trash cans and porta potties, and I stand ready to answer any questions on that topic.
Thank you. Thank you for the update. So my questions, which went to Mr. Rada, and you are our designee here today, were what do we have extra trash cans we could be putting out in the parks? Can we use volunteers if we don't have the personnel hours to empty them, to help empty them? Because I'm getting a lot of requests for participation by the community. So let's start with that, and then I'll follow up with the porta potty question.
Sure. So for trash cans, in our current inventory right now, we have a dozen or so that could be placed in areas that are frequented with homeless camps. A couple concerns that our department has on this is, one, the ones that we do have in inventory are not bear-proof. Other observations we have regarding trash cans within our parks and our trail corridors that are in close proximity to homeless camps, the trash cans, our observations are is when we come to the trash cans when we're performing sanitation, the trash cans have been emptied by the same community looking for items of value within the trash. So we're reluctant to think that if we place them there that they will be utilized properly. We already do have motions in place where Community Work Service provides trash bags to the homeless community, and some members of that community do use it responsibly. They fill the trash bags, they leave them on site, and in lots of cases they drag them out to the trail. We see a couple of opportunities there. Yes, the trash cans could work, and we could see how that works. As it relates to volunteers and being more efficient with staff, we could locate bear-proof dumpsters in strategic locations such as just behind the ice rinks at the Chester Creek Sports Complex. We could locate a bear-proof dumpster at Folker Park. And those are places where staff, volunteers, anyone that sees these bags that are left out by the homeless community could easily be brought to those locations to minimize the effort by volunteers or staff. As it relates to volunteers, we don't have a final stance from legal and risk management on how that all works, but we do have an interest and are kicking around ideas of how we could accommodate a volunteer approach.
Thank you. Do any members have questions about trash cans before I move on to the other?
I just have one question. You had quoted us the amount of trash that you had picked up. Are you picking up trash as well as abating camps? I mean, is there an effort to clean camps that are existing, or are you just cleaning when camps are gone? Can you explain your process then?
There's three ways that happens. One, it's the formal camp abatement process where we're going in there with the CAP team with APD and abating the camps and cleaning up the trash. Then we also get numerous reports where Nancy's staff takes those reports and provides direction to our staff to efficiently go to these spots where homeless camps have left trash, but there's no longer a camp there. In addition to that, our entire maintenance and horticulture crew is always paying attention to our parks and trails for trash, and when they see it, they're directed to clean it up.
Just add one thing. So just a clarification, if there is an existing camp, do you currently go into those camps and clean it all? No.
Only if it's been posted through the process.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Josh, you made a list of all these places that have been abated.
Yeah.
But they were restricted only to the topic of the conversation, which is the greenbelts. You've actually done abatement in other areas,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, and I only spoke to those we had, but if that's what was on the agenda.
Right, because I understand there's been abatement between 15th and 13th on A Street and 3rd Avenue and a number of other places. And so I just want the public to understand it wasn't just limited to those areas. The report is just limited to those areas because that's the topic on the agenda.
Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Josh, do you know offhand how much does one of those bear-proof trash cans cost?
$900.
$900. Thank you.
So moving on to porta potties, I had asked Mr. Rada to cost out the cost to add porta potties to our parks. I don't know if you have those numbers and you could share them. And then I would just like some kind of report on the viability of, do we have budget? Can it happen? Because as you probably know, and I know a lot of the members know, we're getting a lot of complaints about human waste in the parks and in the creek.
Sure. So a standard porta potty is $275 a week. That includes it being serviced twice a week by the vendor. An ADA compliant porta potty is $415 per week, also 2 services per week. And if you require an additional service for that, it's about $40. We do see some barriers and constraints as it relates to this idea of placing porta potties in the actual location where these homeless camps exist. It's a vendor. They do work for us, but they have blacklisted areas around town because of vandalism. These porta potties get burned down. They're subject to all kinds of abuse. The wrong things happen in them. So we think we would get some pushback from the vendor about placing them in those specific locations. Another thing to take into consideration is many of these areas where these homeless camps exist, we already have porta potties in those areas, and they are utilized by the community. We have identified at least 2 other points that would be very strategic in nature to place them. They're the same places I recommended for the bear-proof dumpsters, and if we place them there, they would provide opportunities for the public as well as the homeless community, well, the public, to use them in those locations. As it relates to budget, we spend about we budget $280,000 a year for portable restrooms. Our current plan looks like we're going to meet that capacity. I do think with getting into the weeds of what those numbers look like this morning, that we could probably accommodate 2 additional ones in the moment.
Do any members have questions about that? There was one last topic before I move on.
Just the other night, I went with some reporters on a tour of Campbell Creek, and I was struck by one of the encampments that set up their tent and then set up their latrine literally over the water. And, so it's certainly a concern that needs to be addressed.
The final question I had asked is about sharps and the placement of sharps receptacles. As you probably know, and members know, we get a lot of complaints about needles being out and in our public ways and in our parks. And if there was any way we could mitigate the risks, either through having proper disposal containers available so that someone sees a sharp to carefully pick it up, or what efforts are put to mitigate those effects now by the Parks and Rec.
Okay. So our camp cleanup crews are trained in the appropriate process for cleaning up those to mitigate risk. Those same risks would occur through a volunteer program, which is a concern. As it relates to receptacles, we've done a little bit of research on that. There are locking receptacles. I know by looking at them, they will be easily manipulated to not be locked anymore, and it could be counterproductive. I don't know a whole lot. I don't have a whole lot of information on this topic, and I think there's a benefit in the municipality working with organizations such as 4As that deals with that specifically, and seeing how we can collaborate with them to do something better. We don't know what the best solution is there. That's where we're at with it.
Seeing no additional comments, I think we're going to move on to our public participation part of the agenda. Yes. Oh, yes, we were going to do one other thing. Ms. Burke, go ahead.
Since we've been able to launch the web pages that provide information about where cleanup is scheduled and where we're working now, I wanted to just walk through how to get into it. It's on the maps section of the municipality's main page, and it's one of the featured maps. There are 2 linking maps. There's information, hopefully our wireless will work, information about the cleanup to date, and a dashboard that shows the poundage for the full work that's been done since January. And then on the police posting map, it shows the number of camps that have been abated throughout this year. And so I think this is just a convenient place for the public to get information about the work, and I just wanted to go very quickly to it so everyone can see. Parks and Recreation cleaning metrics map is here. Perfect. That's what's happening. If the map displays funny or you can't see the information, sometimes you have to do what I'm about to do and change your resolution. It just depends on what system you're on. So this is the dashboard for the work to date on the cleaning. It's been 3,946 labor hours total. This is January to current date, and this is the tons cleaned. And then oftentimes when you can adjust your resolution, this will show at the bottom. But if you click this map here, this takes you to the police posting map, and then you can see the work that the police department's done in posting camps to date. So this information is available. It's up and live now, and people can go there for information.
Thank you. Seeing no additional comments, I think we're going to move to Mr. Concer.
I just have to put on the record, I'm really glad to see that finally we are establishing a map where the postings have been done, and hopefully we can get transported data from this, because this is a question that was asked of us by members of the community for about the last year and a half, so thank you very much.
That is available at the bottom. If you click that arrow that I just clicked, it will give you an exportable spreadsheet that you can look at.
Mr. Reynolds.
How many people does this involve? 141 tents, 141 people? Or?
It's the mobility of people in the camps and the in and out of shelter make it very hard to get to that number. That's one of the reasons we will do the summer count across the third week of August this year, so that we at least have a year-to-year comparison. The work that the Homeless Coalition will be rolling out will be a monthly count of people that we encounter at different service locations across the community, which will help us get to that number. But the one number I can provide you is the one that I referenced earlier. 180 people have been contacted by our outreach team since January and placed on the community housing list. And over time, we want to monitor that number, how many people we're contacting as we go, because we believe we'll, at some point, we'll catch up to a backlog of people that we haven't had on the list. And then now they're in the homeless data system, we can begin to take a look at those metrics of how often we see them and where we see them.
Thanks. Thank you. I have a list of 8 people. We'll go through those 8, and then if anybody else would like to speak, you're welcome to do so. And I'll give up this microphone. Why don't we switch? It's a little bit easier to. Ms. Linda Chase, I think you're first. And just as a reminder, we would ask you to limit your testimony to 3 minutes. I'll give you a little prompt at that point to make sure we have enough time for everybody else. And please state your name for the record and share your comments.
Hi, my name is Linda Chase, and I'm with the Citizen Coalition to protect our public spaces. And as we saw here today, children always know the truth, don't they? And also we saw how not easy it is to navigate this, and what do we get when we do. I've tried. Now, I'm no tech genius, but it's ridiculous. And by the way, just for everyone's information, we have two types of maps for anyone. This is just for a portion of Chester Creek, where the fire was last Friday, which happened to be very close to several homes. And we are making maps that you can actually read that will tell you where things are. So if anybody wants one of these and did not get one, I will be happy to give that to you. We also have a GPS coordinates information for anyone who wants it. Now, this is just one section. We're working on several other sections. Then the other thing, I brought today the Assembly Committee Homelessness Statement of Mission. Because I feel in the past over 3 years that we've been coming to this, that there was no attention paid to this. And when anyone says the community is behind these efforts, hasn't talked to the community. Because what we have with the efforts so far is we have a plan that's taken over 3 years to write. We still don't know how many beds are available, although we found out that there are 400 beds available at another entity that was never even contacted by our great Muni. And now some of those bids are committed, but some of them are not, and they are readily available. The other thing is, John was talking about what they're doing in Omaha. Gospel Mission over on Tudor Road does exactly that same thing. And if you have not visited the Gospel Mission, please do. It's clean, it doesn't smell, people have to be sober to go in there, and they do wonderful things. And the money comes from donations. And if you don't think we could get donations from every person here in Anchorage, you know, as she said, $25, $20, $5, we could, but not where we are now. We're tired of this kind of lack of information and so complicated and just a plan. There's no flexibility in it. Where we've heard about another plan in our community where there is flexibility.
Your time is up. If you want to wrap it up, please.
Okay, yes, I will. And we also have to think about all of the nonprofit industrial complex that has been created along with the great government plan. Because we need to look at every single aspect of this, get the numbers of nonprofits down. Some of the nonprofits are doing the same exact thing. We're just doubling it.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, ma'am.
Oh, I wanted to name what we're doing with the cleanup. No problem with you guys, Josh, or anybody in Parks and Rec. What we're doing is we're providing room service on the trails. Because they clean up a camp, and then what happens? Okay, they move. They moved right across the street from Valley of the Moon.
Ma'am, your time is up.
Into Rogers
Please
Park.
complete your comments.
And so then they can move right back because we've cleaned it up. And the same with any kind of trash can or any kind of bathroom.
Time's up. I think you should hand off the mic to someone else.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about
Thank you for
going
your
on.
testimony.
That's all right, thanks.
There's a great deal of
Thanks for the testimony.
frustration with a lot of us.
Appreciate your passion. Next up, Mr. Ron Leva, you have 3 minutes, sir.
I don't need that. Good morning, I'm Ronald Leva. I'm the longest attending public member to show up at this homeless committee. I went through 2 cycles of assembly members. I think Pete Peterson there is the only guy who's been here as long as me. Chris, you were at the Fairview Community Council and heard my concerns. And what I have happened to me being adjacent to the shelter and Beans Cafe is I'm out. It has become too dangerous. It has affected my health with the stress, the diabetes, the heart condition, and now the mental coping with the lack of action by the head of the homeless committee. And talk about nonprofits. For her salary of $196,700, that's the highest in the nation, and we got worse results. So I invite you down to my property for a total liquidation, and I'm making that property available because there's no other place in this city where you will put the homeless because of the way they behave. And the 2 articles I brought was on poop. And I've studied this problem since I started Help the Shelter almost 40 years ago with Brother Bob and Brother Dave. Las Vegas has probably the best 3-tier method of dealing with the homeless, way beyond Omaha, and I suggested that. And that's what you can do with my property. And you either buy it through a GoFundMe, the Rasmussen Foundation, or I'll end up suing you for the economic losses that I've incurred, quiet enjoyment, my personal health, my financial health, and my family situation. You'll end up paying $3 million, and I'll still own the property. So that's not a threat. That's going to occur because of my demands at the last meeting that I didn't get 1 response. There were 14 demands, including disinfecting that area, which is number 1 to have it clean. And the compliance to the conditional use by the shelter in Beans doesn't happen. And they label me the crazy one. No, the crazy ones are the ones enabling that to occur, because the pollution, the fecal material, is not only going to contaminate kids' lunchbox, but the most vulnerable at Beans Cafe, feeding them. And that's why you have 44 million in losses at Providence Hospital, because they're going there saying they're sick. So you want to fight that economically, clean it up and disinfect it. And when she says under oath she doesn't recall that I requested it be disinfected, something's wrong. And at that salary of $200,000, she should recall that the number one thing is to clean up the poop. And it's all throughout the city, but it's the worst down by the shelter in Beans. If you can't clean up that area, you're not going to have any success anywhere else. So these demands, I wanted answers in writing, and I didn't get a single one. So to have public participation, hey, Mr. Gates here is the only one who's hard of hearing, but the rest of you, I think, have deaf ears, and I'm learning sign language.
Your time is
So,
up, sir.
do you have any questions?
I see no questions for you, sir. Thank you.
You're
so
all
much for your
invited
testimony.
to a fundraiser tomorrow night on Carlick Street. That's a fundraiser to fund my appeal on my conviction of allegedly disinfecting that area on Carlick Street.
Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it. Next up, we have Ms. Sarah Oates. If you could come to the microphone, please. State your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Sarah Oates, and I'm the president and CEO of the Alaska Cabaret Hotel, Restaurant, and Retailers Association, commonly known as Alaska CHAR. I'm here speaking for the hospitality, restaurant, and alcohol industries today. I would first like to thank you for your efforts on these really complicated issues. I know it's not as simple as just, waving your baton and everything happens and is finally magically cleaned up and okay. And I just want to say that I'm very interested in working on these issues with you. I have had a number of meetings over the last couple of months with other organizations and individuals as to what our industry can do toward helping tackle these issues. I am interested in having more meetings, and I will do more outreach to you on this committee and others here in this room. If you'd like to contact me, please do. But in a recent meeting that I had, I was having discussions about efforts that our organization is currently doing with the Department of Corrections on prison reentry program. And we're providing training to people who are in the prison system and are going to be getting out soon for, it's called Serve Safe training, it's food manager training. And we are looking to help get prisoners back into being productive, included members of society. And it was recommended by one of the individuals who I met with that we look into doing something similar to that for homeless people. And so I've done some outreach to some of my members, not a ton yet because I just had this meeting last week, but the responses that I've been getting from my members so far are really positive. They are interested in helping. As you all know, our industry is a little concerned that there have been a lot of comments about how the alcohol industry doesn't do its share. We don't do enough in tackling these issues. And a lot of my members were really offended by those statements or hurt by those statements because many of the restaurant owners and business owners in this community do things that are perceived to be small efforts, but to them they're big. Whether it's food drives or fundraisers, employing homeless people or giving free meals or doing cleanups, those are big efforts on individual businesses, and collectively it really is a lot of work that they're doing. So what I am requesting is some direction from this body or from others who've been really actively involved in this for a long time, because I'm not an expert on these issues.
is some direction for my members on effective methods that we can do that don't necessarily involve us just opening up our pocketbooks and writing large checks that will make a larger impact, that we could do more collectively or a more organized effort, so I can do more outreach to my members and we can make more of an impactful difference on these issues. So again, the work that I'm wrapping up, but the work that I'm currently looking into right now, I believe will help provide stability. If we could work on getting these people jobs, secure jobs. I know stability is a huge, important factor here, that word's been thrown around a lot today. By providing a consistent income and helping this vulnerable population, again, be productive and feel included in the community. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Actually, we have a quick question for you, Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, thank you. You just stated that your members were hurt because people suggested that they weren't doing enough or wanted to see them make a financial commitment on the profits that they're generating off of the market, bottles, woods, etc. What I would like your members to do through you would be to come up with your own internal audit and publish for us in a way that we can understand the commitments and the contributions that your members are making, so that when it comes time to ask the question, is it true, we can look at it and see that where it's actually going. Because I don't doubt that everybody is doing a small bit. And so maybe when we see what your commitments are, then we can help to shape ways that it can be more effective in the context of a systematic approach to resolving some of the chronic challenges we're facing.
I will certainly do some outreach.
Thank you. Looks like no other questions. Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Next up, we have handwriting is hard to read, but is it Russ Reno? Is that correct? Okay, sir, if you would come forward and state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Russ Reno, and I'm a business owner and a resident of downtown Anchorage. And Linda spoke about how we've seen all these, that people aren't really communicating what's going on from one to the next, and we're seeing that there are more resources out there that are not being utilized. I went to an event that Senator Begich set up, and I was sitting across the street from the Veterans Homeless Administrator, and to my right was another administrator for another portion of it, and she was talking about how she had no place to place people, that she had a veteran and no place to place them for that evening, just for instance. And then the veterans coordinator stands up and says, well, I have 20 beds available last night. And it's like, well, why aren't we communicating this stuff to one another? Why aren't we set up with a communication liaison, or however you want to do it? And we've suggested this many times in public forum. We have gone to the different meetings that you've had here. We've watched you spend a lot of money on feasibility studies over the years, and it seems to be this vicious circle when there are some basic things that can be done to make a difference. If Ron does leave and that property does become another social service entity down there, you've got a big problem coming from the remainder of the people who live on 3rd Avenue downtown. We don't need any more social services downtown. We do need some social services down where the hospitals are, where people can get help, where there are people that are there to assist them, but putting something more downtown is not what we're after. We just saw that go through with a land swap down there with the Hope Church and the women's shelter down there, and now they're providing food in a mass way because they have a school down there, which we're all for helping out the individuals that are down there, but it's attracting even more people down to our area, and that's just compounding the problem. And we've gone to Nancy and to several of you about being a part of it as locals that wanted to be a part of the public outreach and part of the public help. And we're told, oh, just stand by. We'll get back with you in this month, and then we'll get back with you in that month. We get put aside when we've done things like the 3rd Avenue Radicals running down there and cleaning up ourselves, and then get chastised for doing that under less than 40 degrees, I think was what we got in trouble for that time. But we cleaned up something. We're wanting to do something, and to date, it has not been set up for a volunteer program. To date, we have not been asked to continue that, and we keep just being pushed to the next feasibility study. It's just, well, here's the next thing. And I sat there and watched the outcome of the last homeless count in the winter of last year, and it was a single-page report, one single page with bold lettering I think it was 471, something like that, they had abated and no other data. So we just waited a whole year for that report. I think that report for a year's worth of work should have been about this thick. And so are we really spending the money in the right spot? That's what I think this committee needs to be looking at. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up, we have Rose Hubbard. Come to the mic, please, and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Rose Hubbard, and I am with Anchorage Communal Homeless. So we just changed our name to Anchorage Communal Homeless Village Project. We just had our first board of directors meeting, and I wanted to give you guys an update on this. We are actively looking for a site and want to work with the assembly, want to work with the Anchored Home and other entities that are part of the continuum of care to provide a way to have individuals that are suffering from homelessness for whatever reason a place to stay. I understand that everybody gets frustrated because they see the person passed out on a park bench, or they see the panhandler, and that is very frustrating. It's very frustrating to me in a different way because I have a heart that wants to put them somewhere. I don't want to just shuffle them aside and shuffle them out of sight, out of mind kind of thinking. So we would like to partner with all the powers that be, because it's not going to be just one person, it's not going to be one group, it's not going to be one solution. It's going to take everybody. It's going to take the municipality, the state of Alaska, Anchored Home. It's going to take Brother Francis Shelter. It's going to take Catholic Social Services, Lutheran Social Services, everybody getting in and getting their hands dirty with this. And I would like to thank you guys for continuing to hold these meetings and continuing to listen to us.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Okay, next up, we have, again, handwriting's tough. Sherry Laurie, is that right? Oh, well, your name's on there. You want to speak?
Yeah, I will. I'm Sherry Laurie. Thank you for the chance to speak.
Sure.
I'm the executive director of the Downtown Hope Center, one the rest is referring to. We operate very similar to what Mr. Wheelsman was talking about. We have 50 homeless women that stay there every night. We're a dry shelter. We've been there about 5 years now. And I was down in Skid Row a couple of weeks ago and saw their operation down there. They're through the rescue mission. It's now called City Gate Network. There's 300 of these organizations around the United States. We've just joined the network, so we have access to all their resources. We were at the Los Angeles mission and the Union Gospel mission down there. They have done something really unique. And it's similar to what we're doing we're on a very small scale with the culinary school, the bakery, the shelter, and that thing. But down there, what they've done is that same thing, but they have taken people that have come out of the DOC, and this is along with the lines of the rest of it. They've taken the people coming out of corrections, and they're hiring them, and they're establishing, they call them oases, service oasis. And so they have restrooms around that are not just porta potties, but they're actually built shelters. And they take the people from the DOC and they guard these shelters. And so that's a first place of employment for them when they come out. So they have them 24/7 so that the homeless are able to access those. It's made a tremendous difference. We actually saw some of them. And they're protected. They actually have like a little fenced area around them. And when they go in there, they're able to use those facilities. It seems like that would cost a lot, but in the long run, with all the other stuff that's with it, it actually is a really good use for reentry for people. So we're constantly looking at ways to help people reenter. And I did just write this down. The plan that we're looking at is first saving people, rescue people, get them out of the situations there. And the women that are beat up, we have a lot of women that come in beat up every night. We bring them in, we get them safe. Then we try to get them sober. Then we stabilize them, give them a place so that we get them into the bakery, so they're able to work in the bakery. They're able to let down their guard and be around other people and start becoming more feeling human. We treat them with dignity. Then we start teaching them the skills through the bakery program, the culinary program. That gives them a security that they're starting to pull up some of those things from their past, that they actually do have some skills and can do something. And then we try to get them into housing, get them settled. So we're looking at different ways we work with where we can. Housing forms. Several of our women have housing now. And then finally get them serving, so they're actually get their jobs and then come back and volunteer. So our heart is to serve. We are a nonprofit. We don't take money from the city, from the government. We really do this with private donors. We're a faith-based operation. So that's it.
Thank you for your testimony.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, Mr. Tom McGrath. Please state your name for the record, please. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Tom McGrath. Been coming to meetings since the 80s. Back in the 80s, myself and Bonnie Jack and Sam O'Connor went to the North Star Community Council meeting. Said, we'd like to help. And we were told, butt out, this is our purview. That was from Catholic Social Services. Then in the 90s, I got involved with the Meister administration and did a citywide cleanup, and I think we really made a lot of difference. But one thing I've realized over the last 40 years is you guys will never fix this. These 2 ladies probably have done more to fix problems than anybody else. I mean, they do a great job at a WIC. They do a great job at the downtown soup kitchen. When I was in Salt Lake recently, I was at one of the Catholic churches, and they had the homeless committee. I said, what's your secret? Because it was really clean. And they said, everybody has to sign a contract. They're going to behave themselves. I was just in Tucson. They have 6 homeless shelters. No city. Like Omaha, it's nonprofits and individuals that do it. The city can't solve this. Like in the Parks Department, they do a great job. Yesterday I picked up a bunch of trash at 15th and A. This morning it was completely trashed. They came out and picked it up because I don't have the wherewithal to move it anymore because I don't have a pickup. But the bear-proof dumpster. I've had businesses, I've had dumpsters, I've never had a bear-proof dumpster. The only people that require bear-proof dumpsters are you. That's just stupid. I'm sorry, it's just stupid. Porta potties. Yeah, I understand. I wouldn't want to put one on a bike trail either, except that we do. At the Valley of the Moon Park, we got it. At Westchester Lagoon, we got them. They're put out there in the summertime, and you can watch it, Valley of the Moon. A lot of homeless people use the porta potties in the summertime. And in the wintertime, they're not there. One of the biggest problems is zoning enforcement. Chris told me, we added $200,000 to zoning enforcement last year. You need to add a lot more than that. And you finally got the ordinance to take care of properties that are in disuse or not being used, whatever, with a fine at the 3rd year of $3,000. But there's no way for me to find out if a property's on the list. I can call and I can report it over and over and over, but nobody will tell me, is the Big Timber Motel down here that has just fallen down and has been for years, is that on the list? So, you disenfranchise the public continually. And trash, there's a mattress on Benson between Arctic and Spenard. If I still had my pickup, I'd go pick it up and I'd take it to the, but how long is that mattress going to sit there? And how many muni vehicles and how many other vehicles are going to pass it by for months and months? So I think the biggest problem in Anchorage is the city thinks that they can solve all the problems and never will. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I have a couple of questions for you, Mr. Weddleton and then Mr. Austin.
For my part, one of 11, but in the 3 years we've been working on this, I have never had the impression that this body or the city has any intent of taking the main role of solving the homeless problem. We rely almost completely, it's very obvious and it's our intent, on nonprofits, Catholic Social Services. The way these people do amazing work. My experience, limited with other cities, is that's the same. The city tax dollars put very little into it. It's relying on nonprofits. That's what our intent is to do. When we have a role, it is to fill in the cracks, try to coordinate it, and get that system working together better. So you're exactly right, but I don't accept that we're here to solve it without them. 90% or more is the amazing work that the nonprofits are doing.
But
And I don't see any change.
you're spending a lot of money coordinating all this.
There's money spent.
And I think that money could be much better spent by just giving it to some people that actually do the work.
Thank you, Tom. You know, we go back and forth on a number of issues because of different perspectives, but and I'll never challenge that you aren't out there doing the work that a lot of members of the community say they want to do, but they just say you're doing it, which is going out and cleaning up your neighborhood park, cleaning up across the street from your house, because if you don't, no one else will. And I'm going to say it again, that I believe we as a municipality have dropped the ball. I've heard a couple of comments to this effect, that we don't come up with a better way for volunteers to participate and to be part of a systematic approach. And so I'm going to continue to harangue folks that we need to come up with an effective way to support the members of the public who are interested, because we can't do it. It's, you know, the John F. Kennedy model is, you know, that's not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, and there are people here who are willing and committed. We really need to come up with a more strategic way to apply that energy, because I have seen it blocked, and it frustrates me. And so I will continue to support that as a policy.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I agree as well, and that's what I've learned from my experience working in this area, that we can't do this, and that the cities that have made real progress have moved the energy from the city to a coalition, and the city is a partner. And so I think that's exactly what we are doing and need to do even better. Next up, we have Paul Hilling. Am I saying that correctly? Paul, are you here?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it okay if I sit?
Sure, absolutely. If you can state your name for the record, you have 3 minutes.
Paul Hilling, resident of Anchorage. I would like to know if the mayor and assembly are happy with the Ninth Circuit decision. And could this be the reason, if they are happy with it, could it be the reason for their parent
Sure, if you could
dragging
put the
things out?
microphone next to you.
Oh, you can hear better. I'd like to know if the mayor and assembly are happy with the Ninth Circuit decision. And could this be the reason for dragging things out, as it seems? Does any reasonable person really believe that the Eighth Amendment that prohibits cruel and unusual punishment applies in this case? Apparently the Ninth Circuit judge panel believe that, at least in part. I think that perhaps is it possible that the mayor and assembly consider, as many people do, that homeless are an oppressed demographic, and in reality, and so that, you know, in a sense, they really can't. A lot of things they do are going to be overlooked because of that. But as it turns out, it seems as though 1%, or at least a large part of it, 1% representing the homeless, is in fact manipulating us. That is the 99%, along with other homeless people, by the way, who are very much oppressed by many of those that are among them. There is an amicus, or many cities are filing amicus briefs, okay, in support of the Boise, Idaho case. And I have the information, I have the name of the attorney in Los Angeles that's gathering that information, that's coordinating it. So I would like to know if the assembly and the mayor are interested in that. I would like somebody to get back, I would like to hear from everybody actually, get back to me and tell me whether you support filing an amicus brief, spend some money, because the people of Anchorage are learning more and more about what's going on here. Rhode Island, okay, Seattle is Dying. It's a documentary, many have seen it, put on by a TV station. It's on YouTube, you can't miss it, it's over an hour. Seattle homeless, my sister lives in the area, says it's increasing, and because of the enabling and the benefits, people come there. You won't have enough places to put them if they keep coming, no matter how much space there is. Rhode Island, at the end of that documentary, they're doing things, they're saving lives of homeless people, okay? People here are dying because of the homeless, people in homeless camps, homeless people are dying because they're not being dealt with. Okay. But we're basically enabling people who want to continue with crimes and drugs, the ones that are doing that, and even those who have the means to pay rent. Okay, I'm certain of that. Also, why cannot the municipality prosecute litterers, or does the mayor and assembly maybe not have that real high on their agenda? Are they able to check IDs? We said, did the Ninth Circuit say they couldn't check IDs, so we know who these people are? And maybe we can cite them for littering when they leave or before they leave. Can we, can they in fact be prosecuted for littering? One last thing. Okay, again, I will ask, is the mayor and assembly interested in filing an amicus brief along with other cities to support Boise, Idaho in their upcoming appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court? Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. If you could leave your contact and information with me, I'd like to
Thank you, sir.
I'll contact you offline. Appreciate it. Thanks. That is all the people that on our list. Are there other people who would like to speak? Yes. Why don't we go with you, sir, and then move down. Please come forward, state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Rob Couples, property owner at 3rd and Hyder and fellow 3rd Avenue Radical. I just have one comment that I'd like to point out. I don't often come to these meetings. I have a lot going on and it's hard for me to make it. But I'm a little discouraged because I'm hearing a lot of conversation by the members of the body about trash cans and porta potties, and I feel like you're putting an awful lot of effort into figuring out how to accommodate and facilitate these people, and not enough effort into figuring out how to eliminate these camps. How do we get them out sooner? How do we get them out in 24 hours? What do we have to do legally to make that happen? Stop wasting time on trash cans and 2 porta potties for an entire city. Figure out how to abate these camps in 24 hours. Thank you.
I have a comment related to your statement.
I appreciate your comment. That said, I receive tens of phone calls each week about trash, poop, and needles, and I am working tirelessly to work on shelter. But when the response is we want those things gone, I think we have to do them in tandem. We have to do both because we have public health and safety concerns about those things. But that's not being done to the exclusion of the other. And there are real and serious efforts afoot to find additional shelters so we can continue to notice and abate, clean up camps and get people into permanent housing. That's just a longer process usually, and it's not the immediate things that people are calling. And so, in my view, to kind of mitigate some of those issues in the interim, gives myself and others a little bit of breathing space to work on the other issues that take a little bit longer time. So your comment is well taken, but I think that things have to be done in tandem.
The city's had a lot of time without progress.
So I would offer there has been progress. You know, we could go back and forth, we do often, Rob. It's interesting when you sit and come to these meetings over time. 1 month, the public demands, we get a report on data. And so a couple months later, we report on data. Then we get shouted at, we don't want data, we want results. And then the next month we hear, well, those results aren't okay. What we really need to do is clean up the needles and get the poop out of our parks right now. We're not going to get there by getting Section 8 vouchers, you know. And then the next month, and the next month. And so when you come to these meetings, often see kind of this revolving process of a conversation. And much of the work happens in a coalition or outside in the community. And so I would offer to members of the public that this is not the sum total of what we're doing. This is simply a point of contact where we're offering the public a chance to hear what we're working on today. And so I am, like Ms. Salatil, confronted on a very regular basis with existential problems of today, and then also of what are we going to do that's going to break the cycle. And so that work is happening. And I just want folks, if it's possible, to have you hear the broader context, because we're working have every department of the city working on this question. And we need partners. We need the state to come to the table. You know, I know you don't want to hear people pointing the fingers in the other direction, but the fact is, a solution that suggests we just start citing people and arresting them, I guess, for littering, where do we take them? We take them to the state jail. And the state jail says we don't accept them here for that. And every point, we have someone in a behavioral health crisis in the camp, someone who's just really crazy. We pick them up, we try to take them to Providence, which is where you take them. They say we're full. We try to take them to API. They say they're full, and so our officers then take them to jail. And then once they're done with the jail, they land on 3rd Avenue, as soon as they can say their name, basically. And so we need more partners in this, and we are working our tail off. And I recognize the needs of the public to be heard and to have their needs met, in particular those who live in abutting areas where the homeless issues have been concentrated. It's different there than it is everywhere else. So we are listening and we're working.
One quick comment. So, and we've talked about this multiple times. So, the state says, our members of the legislature say you're not doing enough. I hear from you, we're trying, but we're not getting the support on the legal side from the state. So, I understand, okay, you arrest these people, it's a revolving door, they're right back out on the street. Is there value in at least going through that exercise so that you have the strength and pointing the finger back at the state and saying you're not providing us the support we need?
Thank you for your comment, sir. I think we have one other person. Would you like to speak, ma'am? Okay, if you could state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Is this working? Yes. Hi, my name is Katie Lissy. I live in Fairview on Cordova Street. I'm scared and angry. I'm kind of picking up on that from this room, and that makes sense. The number one concern of all people is safety. I understand that I can only keep my family safe if we make sure that everyone is safe. And I just want to make the comment that a homeless shelter is not a home. That's why I'm here to speak for those that are addicted and suffering, those that are traumatized, those that were let down by the system as children, those that do not have access to a bathroom or transportation so that they have to poop in public like an animal. This is traumatizing for all of us. The 10 Cap people not only have to worry about their safety and where they're going to sleep, but they also have to worry about city workers who are constantly coming to throw away. That is not garbage. It is people's only worldly possessions when they don't even have a home. All of this is preventing them from getting back on their feet. We can save a bunch of money by keeping people like my friend Tina from going to the hospital almost every day and meet all of our needs. John Whittleton mentioned a place that he went to. His place sounds like a great example. It's not the only place in the world that's doing this. There's places all over the world. I just met somebody from Saskatoon, Canada. They're doing this. I'm going to go meet with them and see. They take pregnant women off the street. They keep them out of the hospitals. And that's saving a ton of money. If we keep people out of the hospitals, we can divert this waste money to helping people to heal. Let's think about what's best for our community as a whole. Thank you guys. I'm so glad you're all here.
Thank you for your testimony. Okay, I think we had one other person raise their hand. Stephanie, were you wanting to speak? You can state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Stephanie Rhodes, and I have also come to these meetings for quite a while, resident of the South Edition. I do want to say there's a different tone. Put it closer, please. There's a different tone today in this meeting, and I want to thank the 2 new co-chairs. I do think that you're listening. I do think that you are looking at doing something more strategic with these meetings and also with the assembly, and I think that that is huge. The city is not responsible for solving the entire problem. However, the city is entirely responsible legally if they wish to abate encampments on shelter. The 3 legal requirements of abatement are shelter, notice, and storage. The city finally stepped up to zone notice and finally stepped up to property storage. But shelters are not what the city is doing, and it's not what the city is going to do. that does seem like an area for strategic partnerships. And I think that every single testifier you heard today is ready, willing, and able to enter into those kinds of strategic partnerships. That's what you need to capitalize on, because you don't have the money to do the rest of it. I would really urge that there be a process other than this process for people to come together and to actually create collaborative, problem-solving, strategic partnerships to solve not just the housing and supports issues, which are pretty well covered, I would say, by ACEH, and I think Nancy spends an inordinate amount of time on those. But you need a strategic plan for pillar, 3 of the Anchored Home Plan, which is the part that belongs to the public and the part that is the municipality's responsibility. I totally agree with this woman here who talks about the trials and tribulations of people in the camps, but that's also why we can't tolerate the camps. That's their life. We shouldn't allow people to live that way. But the public can't live the way we're living. There was a huge fire on Friday. It seriously and imminently affected people's property that they've worked their lives for and that they pay taxes for. There needs to be as much love and understanding of the people you govern for there to be respect here as there is for the people you govern also who are living in these camps. So I think the message I'm trying to send you here is do as soon as you can. Find that place for the community voice, not just to listen to them bitch at you in these sessions, but to work collaboratively with us to solve the problems that maybe are partly ours and are partly yours. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We have just a couple more minutes, so I have time for one more. Sir, do you want to speak?
Yeah, I'll be real quick. I'll make
Please state your name for the record and make a brief, please.
My name is Jeff Lansfield. I just want to say, first to admit I'm new to this issue. I'm like most people, I see it and don't get much involved in it, but I've been working on a story the last 2 days on the issue. Some people I know that have been using the trails and have been affected by the issue have reached out to me. Someone sent me a picture of one of the areas where it was just incredible. The trash and the stolen bike parts and the tools and the generators, propane tanks. So I've spent the last 2 days in these camps talking to these people, and it's just kind of incredible because some of the conversation I hear almost makes me think that people don't understand what's going on. And that's just from 2 days of being in the camps and talking to these people and witnessing all of it. And, you know, volunteers, I mean, it's pretty scary going in some of these places. Trash cans. I don't know how many, this guy seems like he's been back there, but it's just, to me, it's pretty incredible the contrast of this meeting in this nice conference room compared to where I've been in the last 2 days, seeing this stuff and talking to, and some of them are, not all of them are bad people. A lot of them were willing to talk to us and gave us their stories, and many of them said they haven't really ever talked to anybody that's come into the camp. So that's just my experience. It's anecdotal. It's from 2 days of working on this story and talking to people, but it just seems like there's a big contrast of what's happening out there and what's happening here. It's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We're getting close to the end. I wanted to make a few brief statements before we close. I first wanted to thank you all for coming. It's really important that you're here and that your voices are being heard. I want to reiterate what I said at the very beginning, that it's really important to us that we spend our time wisely, and if we are going to invite public testimony, as one of the speakers said, that it's at a really thoughtful place and time, and that people are there who are a part of this more than the assembly and the city, but the entire coalition. So, one, we're going to work with the coalition to find a really thoughtful time and place where public can come forward, and we can not only listen, but we can work collaboratively towards solutions. Second, the business committee is really going to focus its energy on working on potential policies. So the next session is really going to be primarily dedicated to working on the ordinances that we discussed earlier. And third, if there are any closing comments from Assembly members? If not, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.